And I said, so you need a koala AI? And he goes, oh, that's exactly what I want. But what I need is an AI that says there are no koalas here. And I say, okay, so it's a no koala AI. And he goes, yes, that's what I need.
That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, 𝗀𝗲𝗙𝗿, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale. Hello and welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're really excited to have today's guest, Ken Francis, CEO of Actuate. Ken has over 35 years of experience in the security and technology sectors and has led global teams in sales, talent leadership, commercialization, and product management, consistently driving program execution at scale. At Actuate, Ken is spearheading AI-driven video surveillance solutions that help channel partners and customers reduce costs and improve security efficiencies. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I always like to start with a little bit about your background. What first got you interested in technology way back when you were getting started?
So I was coming out of the military in 1989. And so 1990, I'm like, okay, how do I take my military experience and apply it to something in the business world? And so I thought security was a really good conversion and that I was going to go do 5 or 6 interviews with security companies, and it was all just going to be apples to apples to apples. I remember going to Atlanta, Georgia, and spending 3 days interviewing with 5 companies and driving home with a piece of paper with 4 lines on it, creating 5 columns, and I was writing pros and cons to each of the interviews. What I didn't know for many years thereafter was that I was comparing apples and oranges and bananas. And I wound up taking what I thought was the perfect job for me for what I thought were the right reasons for me. And the honest truth was it was just a roll of the dice. I took the lowest paying job out of all of them because I'd been sold and convinced that getting that background early on is something that would strengthen my long-term career aspirations and opportunities. And that if I took one of the higher paying jobs, I'd never want to go backwards and I would never come back and get the experience that I would have missed. And so I wound up working for a burglar and fire alarm monitoring company, which had huge RISC 6000 computers, the IBM computers. They must have weighed 200 pounds. They were on casters and we had to wheel them around the building. I remember the IT leader saying, hey, if you attach this cable to the left one and this other end of that cable to the right one, that's what we call fault tolerance. And I remember using that word for years, and it was wrong. I was telling people something that wasn't right, but it made me really hungry for figuring out what really was right and what I could learn on the technology side of the industry that I had decided to get into. And that kicked me off, and I'm glad that I had that experience early on.
So you've spent over 3 decades in this space now, running multiple large businesses. What was the spark that led you from traditional video surveillance to founding or leading AI-driven security companies?
I think I can answer that one succinctly. Let me think. As I was telling the story about getting out of the military and into this first company, 3 years into that job, I went to interviews for some other jobs, and these jobs were out in sales and made a lot more money. And I remember the guys that I was interviewing with they laughed at me. I mean, not like loud laughing, but they laughed, they chuckled a little bit, and they said, what makes you think that you can do that operational job in the background and then take what you learned there and come out here and lead salespeople? that doesn't make any sense to us. And I said, well, I was told it was kind of the enterprise training program, where you get hired at enterprise rental car and everybody's a VP, right? And, I just laughed and I made the conversion from that tech background to sales, then sales management, then bigger sales management, and then bigger sales management. And that was the first 10 years of my 35-year career. So when I left 10 at the 10-year mark, it was because I just finished a master's degree in IT management, and I wanted to go apply that to the next chapter of my career. And so I purposely went looking for closer to the smallest company I could find in the little field. There were about 15 companies that competed in the field that I wanted to get into, and I chose to work for number 11, because if I'd gone to work for number one, two, three, four, or five, I would have never ever been in a position to affect the course of the company or the scale of the company. I
Mhm.
would have really just been one of the minions, if you will, kind of growing over time, but growing slowly. And so my choice was a really good one because we turned that number, 12 or something company into number four, all the way up to number four over about a 6 or 7 year period. And I ranked that number four just in revenue size. The features of the product that we were delivering, it could have been in the top three. And so it was a great run and it gave me the career legs that I needed to go to the next job, which was in the number two company with four times as much revenue, that was much more mature and had some really challenging consolidation problems. And I got to go consolidate 17 different products around the world into four products. All of that continued to whet my appetite to eventually founding something of my own. And that's where it all started.
So, had you always had that desire or inspiration to be in leadership and to kind of take control of a company, or was that something that came on later on during your career?
I believe that when I grew up as a teenager, I liked being the captain of the football team as opposed to never being in a leadership position. My father had been a military fighter pilot, and we had grown up all over the world. And I think some of that confidence just kind of rubs off in family environment. And so I did. I wanted to put my mark somewhere. I wanted to be not just responsible for running, but responsible for building. I wanted to build something and have a lot of folks that were bought into and making their living off of what we were building.
So, talk a little bit about what you've been working on most recently, Actuate. Tell us about the company and what you guys are building.
Well, in the last 10 to 15 years, as AI has become more and more relevant in all parts of our world, the physical security industry and video surveillance is a real prime target for the application of AI. There's lots of things you can do with AI on a video surveillance, or we'll just call it a video stream. But the little segment of the market that we play in is what's called false positive reduction. There's a 800 or so monitoring centers out there, and they could range from 5 operators to 500 operators. I mean, some of them are really big centers. And so if they are monitoring 20,000 video surveillance cameras and they were to get a thunderstorm that caused 10,000 false alarms, now their whole day and night would be wrecked, right? So we needed some form of AI that would eliminate those false positives and say there's no reason to look at this video. Just don't even send it to an operator. And then that started to evolve and evolve and evolve. And eventually people said, okay, well, I want to be able to see somebody on a red bicycle wearing a yellow backpack. And if that happens across any of the 20,000 cameras that I'm monitoring, I want it to pop up to one of my operators. So then we had to start writing custom algorithms. And AI has just taken off from there.
Very interesting. So, what was your first introduction to AI in your career?
About 15 years ago, I was visiting Sydney, Australia. I was running one of the biggest cloud video companies in our industry, and I was calling on a property management group who owned some of the tallest, nicest buildings in what we call gateway cities, the biggest cities in the world.
Hmm.
They were telling us about the kind of properties that they owned, and we were pitching them on using our video surveillance. And about halfway through 1.5 hour pitch, we were describing something when the CEO stand up and said, "Hold on, wait." He said, "I want to tell you my koala. I have a koala problem." And I said, "Koala? You mean koala bears?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "My company, we really are pretty simple. The government tells us what properties to buy. Then they tell us what kind of building they want on it. Then we build it, and then we rent it back to the government. It's really, really simple business when you think about it at that high level." He said, "But when I put the cash out to buy the property and then I start building, and then the government, my customer, tells me to stop building because I might be on a koala bear hibernation spot, then they can hold me up for months and months or even years." And I said, "So
Uh,
you need a koala AI?" And he goes, "Oh, that's exactly what I want. But what I need is an AI that says there are no koalas here." And I say, "Okay, so it's a no koala AI." And he goes, "Yes, that's what I need." And I literally called the head of the engineering team for this very, very small AI group that we had been working with. And we said, "Could you guys develop this?" We put him on speaker in the room in front of 25 people with no warning, no idea that he was talking to one of the most powerful property management groups in the world. And the guy answered all the right questions. And that really excited me. I was like, we can do this kind of thing. And so I've told that koala bear story a lot, and it's always been a really easy thing to digest.
oh, that's great. That's fascinating. So, talk a little bit more about Actuate and what you guys are doing right now. What kind of clients do you work with, and what are your technology solutions? What sets you apart from other tools out there?
Well, let's see. Let's begin with kind of the fundamental understanding of machine learning and how it works. Not everybody that represents themselves as an AI company is doing true machine learning. And so when I I didn't found this company. I've been running it for a while now, and the founder and the main investors were looking for someone with my very kind of specific background who really understood how to what get the product to market, because our industry goes to market through a channel of resellers, if you will. And they might be dealers or systems integrators or alarm companies or whatever you call these folks. We have about 75 of the 800 to 1,000 video monitoring centers around the world that are counting on our product every day to keep the false alarms off of their operators' desks. And we bring on between 3 and 5 new monitoring centers a month. And so if we sign up 50 or 60 new monitoring centers every year, our business grows pretty substantially. And to be quite honest, the segment is growing substantially. The video market segment kind of grows at 10% every year anyway, and we'll call it cloud-based video grows at about 30%. And this little segment that we're in, monitored video, grows at about 60 to 65%. So it's a really, really beautiful market.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you primarily providing solutions for commercial businesses or for residential, or is it a mixture of both?
I'm glad you asked that because it is predominantly commercial. Because the monitoring operation that the monitoring center is selling to the customer is a pretty pricey service. It's not cheap, and it's a little above the kind of traditional home or consumer market space price point. There are other ways for consumers to get lower cost services that will monitor their home. And if somebody walks through a single camera, then it might give them a little motion detector, and then they can get an alert on their phone. But our products are really more focused on the professional monitoring space. And that ranges anywhere from 75 to $150 a month per camera. It really, really depends on how big a quality of video they're using, not related to my product. It's related to the cameras and the recorders and the different solutions that they're using out of the site.
Now, your product is equipment agnostic, right? It can work
It is.
on pretty much any camera.
Yeah,
Can you talk a
absolutely.
little bit about that and how that works?
Sure. Yeah, we refer to it as kind of cloud only. It means that our software and our cloud can receive what's called RTSP streams or SMTP clips from any form of video system that can kind of discharge such a stream. And most all commercial systems of any reasonable quality can deliver that kind of payload. So that comes right into our cloud. We analyze everything on it. And candidly, if there's, 1,000 events that happen, we will whittle that down to the 3 to 5 events that matter and send those over to the operator. And so that's a big thing because if they weren't using a really decent AI on there, that operator would get flooded with stuff and never know what to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how have you seen AI and cloud infrastructure change over the last 6 months? From a consumer standpoint, someone who's just a casual AI observer, it's things have seemed to be evolving very rapidly. Have you seen that on your side of the business as well?
Absolutely. We do originate a lot, or right now, almost all of our own AI. And so all of our machine learning is done by our data science team. Um, One of the things that's coming really fast, though, is the use of LLMs or large language models to supplement the services that we're offering. Maybe they want a little something that's readily available in the LLM world that, when combined with something that we're originating, creates a product that's even a little bit better and easier to use for the monitoring center or the monitoring center's customer.
Hmm, interesting. So how has your AI been progressing over this time? Obviously, a lot of the tooling is improving. Have you seen noticeable improvements in the ability to capture meaningful events and weed out those irrelevant events?
Yes, I'm going to use my a little bit of a Swiss cheese analogy. The interesting thing about Swiss cheese is there's always holes all through it. And so if you were to slice it really thin and then start taking those slices and stacking them up to create like a cube, you would find that with the first slice, there's big enough holes that kind of anything can fall through. When you have the second slice, some of those holes start to get smaller. Third slice, fourth slice, fifth slice. When you get up to 12 or 15 slices, we're creating a pretty impenetrable filter that nothing can get through that we don't want to get through. So really the AI quality is the result of many slices being added to the stack over a period of time. And you just can't do that fast. You have to do it for years and years and years. Each of those slices can take 3, 4, 5, 6 months to develop. So we're very proud that we've got a lot of slices.
So are your channel partners or competitors shifting their expectations now because of new AI capabilities? What are the threats and opportunities that are top of mind for you right now?
Uh, Things like gun detection is probably one of the biggest hot buzzwords out there. Things like slip and fall that you would have in a medical situation, or loitering that you might find around a public building. Those have been around for a little while, but things like gun detection have been fast increasing in popularity, in inquiry, and in adoption. We're seeing many, I hate to say it, but many school systems that are making inquiries about gun detection, and how can they do it reasonably affordably. And that's the real hard part, is the affordability. Even if you do put a really good AI on a camera, you probably still need a human being to take a look at the thing and make sure that it is what it is before you call 911 and get the trucks and cars to roll out.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. What is the amount of false positives that you see with that kind of approach where you're looking for something small like that?
That's a good question. Probably somewhere between 4 and 8% of the events that come in are real. So 92% not real. Um, a really inexpensive AI can pick up a broom, a small suitcase or backpack, lots of things that they're not sure isn't a handgun or a rifle. So I think some of that is just improvement of the technology. Just make it better, make it better, make it better.
Yeah. So professional monitoring centers have historically been really data heavy. How did your background in running private cloud, for example, at Barracuda Networks, inform your approach to AI on video at Actuate?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I spent the last 8 years with the guy that founded Barracuda Networks, and The new company that we worked at is Eagle Eye Networks, and a lot of the learning from Barracuda and Eagle Eye turned into what the Eagle Eye Network solution looked like. And now taking that and applying it to Actuate, we really understand what a video management system goes through in terms of the amount of data that's coming in and the amount of metadata that's going out and how to apply that metadata situationally to the different things. You're right. I think you made a really good point that Dean Draco had built his own cloud at both Barracuda and at Eagle Eye Network. At Actuate, my current company, we're not building our own cloud. We're using a public cloud, but candidly, that probably wouldn't have been the right economic choice years ago, but those public clouds are better now. And we can kind of figure out what services we need from them and what we don't.
Is there plans to eventually get off of the public cloud, or do you feel like that's a solution that'll last you long term?
I think it'll be a combination. In fact, I'm confident it'll be a combination. There'll be some private pieces of the cloud, but it's a whole different world working with the Googles or the Amazons or the Microsofts these days, because you can really subscribe to things as services. And you know, 10 years ago, you were buying like one of 5 or 10 services, and now you can buy one of 50 or 100 or 200 services. So we can be very selective about what we need.
So I always like to ask the question around data privacy, because that's a big thing with AI, and you're obviously doing security monitoring. So there are cameras that are likely in positions that can pick up proprietary information or things on site. So how do you guys handle that? And how do you speak to clients or prospective clients about the data privacy side of things?
Well, it's interesting. Regions of the world, different regions of the world have different regulatory requirements on where their data stays and who has access to it. And I think the most well known is GDPR out of Europe. And so we have to design things that can be GDPR compliant. There are only because I think of things as a global stage all the time. I don't have the luxury of just thinking about US or North America. And so there are many countries that have their own requirements. Australia, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. There's quite a few places that want similar requirements to GDPR, but they put their own little parts of it. Some of those countries are also government controlling the video management systems and connecting all the VMS systems to a central video management platform. And so that helps with keeping the data inside that video management system storage array, wherever that might be, which is probably in the country. And so it's not really just about Actuate. It's about Actuate and the VMS manufacturer working together to ensure that we're following the regulatory requirements.
Does that add a significant cost to the development when you enter a new market?
Interesting question. Not to the development of the tech stack that Actuate manufactures. We use containerized software. And so we can put this in any form of data center. We can run it on GPUs. We can run it on ARMs. And so for us, scaling it is not that big of a challenge. But the VMS, the video management system that's pushing the video that's going to be recorded, they may have to open up a whole new data center. And to plan for the amount of customers or cameras that they're going to have in that country, they're going to have to put some cash up front to put some hardware down. So the hardware guys, yeah, going into a new region, for sure. But for those of us that are pure software, no, it's not a problem.
So that's nice. That's beneficial. So let's talk a little bit about the future of Actuate. You mentioned 3 to 5 new clients coming in through channel partners in a month is kind of what you're looking at, or on average. What would be a big win for you guys over the next 12 months? What is that North Star that you're chasing?
It's a tough question to answer. I believe the number of those monitoring centers is going to continue to grow. And I believe that, adding 3 to 5 a month, while at the same time, the existing 75 or 80 are growing substantially, the two different growth contributors put us at a kind of 2x a year growth trajectory. I'm not sure how to not be happy with that. So the North Star could be to get a year with a 3 to 5 times growth. And that would probably not be predicated on bringing on a couple of monitoring centers, it would probably be predicated on bringing on a couple of really, really big projects. We're working with the Ministry of Interior for one country about some stuff that they want to do, and that could be a moonshot. I use the term moonshot for these kind of big projects. I think we're working with the 911 system administrators for another country, and they've got 61,000 cameras on their system. And so turning AI on all of those cameras all at once it's a big deal. While it's only one, call it monitoring center, it's a lot of subscription.
Yeah, that's a big opportunity. What would you say is the biggest bottleneck that stands in the way of getting some of these deals that you're talking about, these projects?
There's a lot of companies vying for the space, a lot of competitors. It's the competitor rich environment. I tell the story frequently that there's probably 150 companies globally that I've run into in one way or another that are selling AI on video surveillance streams
Mm.
in the commercial space. And I think half of them or better are going to be out of business in 2 or 3 years. And they don't realize that the selling cycle on some of these projects that they're chasing can be 2, 3, or 4 years. And there's just no prize for second place. You could chase for 3 years, they choose somebody else, and all the cash that you burn to go after that project um, doesn't pay off. And then you get in a place eventually where you've got so much cash sunk that your investors are looking at you like, how are you going to outsell this and outgrow this? And I think that's where startups really, really get in trouble is they don't they don't know when to say no. Saying no is probably one of the most responsible thing a tech startup owner can do because you got to do it early before you burn a lot of cash on a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you and how does Actuate strategically set itself apart in these instances? And how do you pick and choose your battles, so to speak?
Generally, if you have, I'll call it industry experienced people, but if you have people who are experienced with knowing what they've successfully integrated in the past, and you can have a reasonable conversation with a customer who's looking to buy something and get a really thorough understanding of what the requirements are that they're trying to meet, then you know whether your product can do it. If you don't have experienced people, they're not going to know that some of those requirements are more challenging and could take longer and delay your ability to deliver. I'm working on a couple of different things where, the customer wants you to deliver a whole lot of the solution before they even commit to you. And so sometimes you just got to figure out how to get on the same page with the customer in terms of requirements, expectations, and cash. You got to make sure that they're really financially committed and don't decide not to do anything at all at the very last minute.
Yeah. Is Actuate currently fundraising, or are you guys in a position where you're cash flow positive enough to not need additional funds?
We're in a good position at the moment. We're comfortable, and we could probably survive on the cash that we have for 3 to 5 years, 3 to 4 years probably. But I wouldn't expect that to be our plan. I would expect that coming into the fall of this year, we'll talk about ramping up investment even further for next year and burning a little bit more of the nest egg to accelerate growth. Because I think I'm really comfortable that we've got the product and the people to get that done.
So what are some of the levers that you would use to accelerate that growth if you had the resources?
Some of the levers. Selling globally requires local influencers in all of the markets that you want to work in. You really, really can't know nothing at all about South Africa and just fly down there for a week and go try to sell some stuff. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So the biggest lever is people and getting the right people in the right locations around the world that are familiar with the channel partners, systems integrators, dealers, if you will, resellers that can successfully deploy and support an application like this is probably the absolute biggest lever because it costs the most to do so. And if you hire incorrectly, you really just you can't recover. You have to change course as early as you discover that you've done that incorrectly. So I think that's the biggest lever. The technology levers, harnessing new models, it's really important to not spend money outside of the segment that you're looking to serve. And so I find that people spread themselves too thin. Companies spread themselves too thin, trying to be an apple over here and a banana over here and an orange over there. And so getting a real thorough understanding of where your AI does a really good job, and then developing the APIs that are necessary to be successful in that space, and then eating your own dog food, building your own solution on top of your own APIs is really the key to success. It's not a terribly difficult thing. It's just very tempting to go after a bunch of grapes. And sometimes you have to say, no grapes. We're a banana company. No offense to the fruit of the loom guys. Seriously.
Well, that's really interesting. So I'll let you out of here on this. If there was one thing in the business that you could change and you had a magic wand to make it happen today, what would that one thing be?
I would already be deployed in more data centers around the world. I would just have more territorial coverage such that when our commercial resources out in the field are talking to customers, we don't have to plan a 3 to 6 or 9 month execution of some kind to get them what they need. We could just do it really quickly. I'd have a built out architecture, a built out infrastructure. That would be the switch that I would flip.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Ken, this has been a really insightful conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show. As we wrap up, can you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Sure. The company is Actuate, and it's at www.actuate.ai. We do have contact forms there. I'm on LinkedIn and would love to hear from you. You'll find me Ken Francis Actuate without any problem at all. And my email address is ken@actuate.ai. Feel free to send me a message.
Fantastic. Ken, thank you so much for coming on the show. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. And as always, keep pitching, keep building, and keep scaling. Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.